Welcome back to Shabby Shac Studio, friends. I'm your host Kim and I'm so happy to have you here. Today we are talking all things Bujo. I am super late this month, I'm so sorry. The studio has been a hive of activity with the release of our extended gifting and linen ranges. If you'd like a closer look, just hit that link below to visit my website and my socials. Although I am a week late, the April setup is bursting with Easter time whimsy, bunnies, tulips and daisies. We'll be watercolouring it together again this month and playing with all my favourite supplies. All the links are below as usual, but if I've missed anything, just pop a question in and I'll get back to you just as soon as possible. As you can see, we're kicking off this month with my monthly colour palette, and all of the colours are just pastel pretty. So I'm actually using lots and lots of colours, and I'll get into that in just a moment, but I'm using lots and lots of pastels that I actually decided to spread throughout my journal, whether it be in Copic or Watercolour, and just thinking of all those things that are Easter and Easter eggs and bunnies and daisies that are often just white or white and lemon, and tulips in all the most beautiful colors. And so I actually use those to blend them through for my color palette. So you can see here I'm sharing that with you. So I do actually skip through right to the end, and you can see me mixing up some of those colors for you in the palette right there on screen. So I am actually using a mix of colors. I had a really good time this month. They're not solid block colors. I do work wet in wet, so you can see that beautiful blend and bloom that we love most about watercolor. But as you can see, it's just something that I completely feel my way on. There's absolutely no guides or sketches. If you feel that that would be too much for you, do feel free to jump in and pop some pencil lines in there. Just keep in mind that if you're working with light colors, that sometimes those pencil lines will show up. That may or may not bother you. Do what makes you feel good and what makes you happy. If you're adding a little bit more punch or a little bit more color, like I have here in places, you will find those pencil lines blend away in any case. You will find that I'm using lots and lots of different blues within this square. I actually do come back wet on dry later on and add in a little bit more. So you will see by the end of this color palette that it's actually quite detailed. Lots and lots of shade in each of the colors, and lots of pinks in that pink, lots of blues in the blue, even bluey greens. And when I actually get to a little bit further down, and you'll see in just a moment, there's pinks and blues blending together to create the prettiest purples in there as well. Okay, so just a little bit of a heads up on the colors, just in case you would like to use the same ones that I have. I do use here in the pinks, I'm using the quinacridone rose with, just as you can see, lots and lots and lots of water to make that a mix of very soft and then some real punchy color that I add in straight from the palette. The blues, I've used the cerulean blue in the first one, but I actually do add in some of the cobalt blue to give it a little bit more depth. The yellows I use are a mix of the Azo Yellow Light and then the Yellow Ochre. So I use them in a few different yellow squares. The greens I use Sap Green. Viridian is a really beautiful bluey green, so I do mix that through with some of the blues. And then I even add a little bit of the Permanent Green and the Hooker Green in to add some depth, which you'll see near the end. And don't be afraid to get in there and add lots of colour. And if you're not happy with how it's drying, so you can actually see the second square right there at the top, you can see as it's bloomed and bled that the colour is quite saturated further towards the middle and the top, and it's lightened up drastically at the bottom. And the Viridian blue, which is a beautiful turquoisey blue right there on the right on the top line, I don't like how that has created quite a line, so I do actually go back and play with that a little bit more, add a bit more color. So you will see this, as I have recorded this pretty much in real time, to show you, and I really do it with, you know, my favorite television program or music on in the background, and I just really relax and enjoy this process. I don't overthink it. So I do encourage you to do you, boo, but I really do encourage you to try not to overthink it and worry about it. If you decide that it's not how you wanted it to look, I don't use expensive products. You'll see that quite often when you look at those links. You will notice that my favorite supplies, Mont paper, which is what this one is, the 190 watercolor A5 pad. It's not an expensive paper, it's a beautiful paper. I love it, but it's not an expensive paper. So if you decide you hate it at the end, you can go back like me and add in a whole lot of color. And trust me, this starts to look really great toward the end. But I do go back a few times and add a little bit of extra color, take some off, mix some different greens through. Don't be afraid to just play with it and feel your way, and one of the good things about using paper and paints that aren't the most expensive in the whole world is that you don't feel so much like, oh my gosh, it's terrible, I've made a mistake and I've wasted money. My brushes, my paper, even my paints are a beautiful Royal Talens, and they're not as the cheapest, but they're certainly not terribly expensive. So, and they go a long way. So I actually do just get to have fun and enjoy this process and not overthink it. And it is my happy place to play with this. As I said, relaxing. Quite often I relax in the evening. When I'm recording them like this for you guys, I do actually do it during the day so that I have the best light. But one of my favorite things to do is watercolor in the evening. I'm not completely switching off, I admit, but for me, it does switch off my overthinking side of my brain. And I do start to just be very intuitive, and I'm enjoying the process. And because there's TV on in the background, I'm not really paying so much close attention that I'm worrying about every little thing. So it frees me up to really enjoy the process and to let the paint do what the paint does. As it dries, you may decide you're not liking something at all. And as it dries, you may think, you know what, I could not have done it on purpose that way, but now that it's bloomed and it's bled and it's done its thing, I actually really love it. So that kind of best abstract impromptu that you kind of look at and you think, how did they know to add that bit there or add that depth there? Quite often it's something that intuitively comes. So allow yourself that time. And even if you're a person that likes really expensive supplies and you're a professional watercolorist, allow yourself some less expensive ones to practice with. Allow yourself that freedom to not have to stress that you've wasted that money. Anyway, so as you can see, that I really just feel my way. I decide where to put the color. I wanted to add an extra yellow, but I didn't want it directly underneath the other one, so I just skipped down an extra square, an extra row. And I really just feel my way through the entire process, allowing little bits of white to show through. And then I come back later when it's completely dry. I add a little bit of wet and dry, and then I actually add a banner and my name color palette. Quite often I add in a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of a pigment liner to signify what my theme is that month. So you will see the final page when it's dry and fully complete. At the end, I always do like a slow pan to show you how it goes. So you can see there how I've added the pink and then the blues in, which is lovely, and that's the cobalt blue added into the quinacridone rose, and you can see it just creates the prettiest purple shade. So I hope you enjoy this process and that you really allow yourself the freedom of just feeling your way, and I will let you continue to watch, and I'll come back in just a minute. So here we are, just finishing off the last of those squares, and as you can see, adding in that wet on dry, and you can see there's this beautiful patchiness and blend of colour and depth, and that little colour palette banner and a couple little daisies before I turn on over the page and start on my page keeper. I actually created these at the very beginning of the year. I had a whole lot of black card, little scraps, and just not big enough to do a lot with, and then I started thinking about they would make great bookmarks. And of course, because I was planning my bullet journal for 2022, I was planning my setup and all of those things, I thought, you know what, they'd make great page keepers and make it really easy to find where each month begins and ends. So Bob's your uncle, and here we are. I turned them into 12 gorgeous little page keepers. I put all the months at the top of each of the page keepers at the beginning of the year, and then pop them aside. Some of them I put in a little pocket at the front of my journal here, and then some I popped in a drawer that I won't be using for a good 6 months down the track. And I come back each month when I decide what my theme for that month will be, and I add in some cute little details that works with the month. So as you can see, I have actually sketched the cover page below in pencil. With lots of bunnies and daisies, and they're on hills and mountains in a meadow. So I actually replicate some of those images onto my page keeper. So this is the little cute bunny butt, the hole punch being its fluffy little tail, and a tree and a tulip, and I'm doing some daisies here at the bottom as well. And then they've already been pre-punched, and they'll be added straight on into my journal before I actually move on to that next page. So the actual cover page I did, as I mentioned, in the evening. I sat down late in the evening and used that as my relaxation. I knew that I wouldn't have time to add that into this journal. It would just make this video way too long. So I did the sweet little pencil sketch. It is on a nice white, it's got a bit of a creamy finish, you can see, but a nice good quality cardstock that I have. It's actually not a watercolor paper, but it takes the watercolor really well. So I did that pencil sketch, then I added in a very abstract soft wash of color here and there, and then I went back once it dried and I inked it, and you will see the pan in a moment and how it turned out. Okay, and here we go into the scan down the page, and you can see that little watercolor below with the bunny in the fields and the clouds in the sun, and it's perfectly imperfect. And I did add the watercolor, although that's not actually a watercolor card. That one is just a nice quality cardstock, but it does take the watercolors well too, which is always a lovely thing. Now I started this one and my computer, my actual phone glitched that was recording, so I do apologize. So you don't see a lot of this till the scan, but this is my actual affirmation page with a favorite quote that I found this month. So I do hope you like that one, and it's a simple one by Brooke Hampton, and it's just so spoke to my heart. I like people who get excited about the change of seasons, the sound of the ocean, watching a sunset, the smell of rain and starry nights. Now, doesn't that just sound like your kind of person? And again, that was just the white pilot pen on my favorite black cardstock. Again, that'll be linked below. Some really simple stars and a moon. The quote, although I kept thinking I need to choose a shorter quote, for me, it just spoke to me this month. So I decided to spread it over the front and back of the card, and then just add another card in. Why not? This is the blessed thing about creating your own bujo and just punching what you want to add in each month. So this is that wonderful freedom that comes with not being set to certain design, and certainly something that I enjoy very much, being able to make it uniquely mine. So then I've moved on using that same beautiful cardstock, and I'm doing my mood tracker. Again, I've kept the same theme with the daisies and the tulips. and the little hills and the meadow and the grass, which you can see, literally just run my pen along and make it bumpy. That's it. That's the whole thought process. This would have a little bit of grass that's grown and needs a mow. It's a field, it doesn't get mowed unless something's eating it. So I just let it be bumpy and unruly and wild. And then I literally just add in some leaves and things as I go. I actually will go back and number those. So each of the flowers, each of the tulips gets a day of the week or the day of the month. And then what I'm going to go do is I'll go back and I'll add in a key and borrow my daughter's favorite gel pens, and I'll just color in the daisies or stripe them or hatch them to signify how I was that month, if it was a day when I felt particularly industrious and busy, or if it's a day when I was feeling really quite stressed and anxious, or even just flat. We all have days when we've worked really, really hard and been doing all those things, and it's just one of those days when you just need to remind yourself to be kind and to give yourself a day off, to stop and do something that makes your heart happy, not necessarily about getting all the things done, because we don't give ourselves credit for all the stuff we do behind the scenes that maybe we don't count as working, but there's washing to be done and there's meals to be made and there's time to be spent with loved ones, and that's just as important, and we should schedule time for that. So that's exactly what our mood tracker is for. And here you can see I've added in those numbers. I haven't added the key yet, but that's an easy one. So I'll just add a little color to signify what each feeling is. Okay, I actually moved on to my quotes page. I normally do a watercolor for this one, but this month I just didn't, I was really time poor, but because I decided to do a double page for the affirmation, I had the back of this card and I thought, you know what? This is great. I'll use this for my quotes, and I actually have so many to add this month that this was really quite fun to just do it on the back of the black card and not have to do a whole new watercolor that I was really far too time poor to do. But then I can just add in my little tulips and make this quite simple and not overthink it, which again is just lovely sometimes. And there you have my quotes page. Really quite simple but impactful. So it'll be a nice spot for me to write down all those words. And then lastly, I did a bit of a flick through because I felt like I didn't share the cover page with you enough. So thought this was an opportunity to show you. There's the color palette, adding in the little banner and the daisies. My favorite pens are my Staedtler pigment liners. So I use the 0.3 on that particular watercolor paper because it's a little bit rougher. There's my little page keeper, again, which is really quite simple. I just use scrap card. That's actually how that started, so it doesn't have to be expensive or overthink it. I use my white Pilot gel pen for that one. I did this sweet little watercolor in the evening, so I did the sketch in pencil as you saw. I actually added in the watercolor and just wanted to add a very abstract, just splash of color here and there, and then I went back and inked it and added in a little bit of detail with the ink. I'm really happy with the sky and the sun and that it's minimal but still impactful. Then I went on to my month at a glance. This was fun and I felt like I needed to catch up a bit this month, so it's quite big and jam-packed, but I've got some holiday time coming up too, so I wanted to have extra room for the notes. And then I've gone on to the weekly, my weekly spread. The first one I did with a little bunny at the bottom, and my affirmation page. I do go on to look at the mood tracker, etc., but I want to take this opportunity to say thanks so much for being with me again this month, guys. I hope that even though I'm late, that even if you are too, that you can still get some inspiration for this one or even for next month, and that you enjoyed sharing this bujo with me again. And thanks so much. Sharing the Copic marker I use for little tulips there. I will link it tomorrow, link it below, so no worries on that one. But you have a great day, guys. I really, really appreciate you being here. Don't forget to hit subscribe. I really do appreciate your support. Thanks so much.